Yo, what's up, guys? We're back, and this one is one of the biggest cards in UFC history, UFC 300. So extremely pumped to break down this fight card for you guys. So make sure to hit that like button, subscribe if you're not subscribed, and get ready for some great predictions. And if you want access to my bets on this card, I do have 13 bets currently, and there's a couple other fight cards going on this weekend. Go to patreon.com/MMA Prediction Guru. But yeah, man, besides that, let's try to get as many likes as possible and let's get into these fights. The first fight of the night, Deiveson Figueiredo taking on Cody Garbrandt. We got two former champions kicking off the card, which is pretty crazy. But interesting matchup. It's a fight that was supposed to go down for the title in 2019, and it was going to be at 125 pounds, but Cody Garbrandt was forced out of the fight with COVID. And they had some beef too, where they had a couple run-ins and it got a little bit heated, but seems like now Cody, he's talked about it a few times that he's working with a sports therapist, and it seems like he's tried to temper his personality and kind of that hot-headedness, which has cost him in certain fights and gotten him knocked out. And if he does that and, continues on the trend that he's been doing with this two-fight winning streak, we could see Cody, get back in that title hunt, especially with the win year. I mean, he's only 32 years old. He's actually younger than Figueiredo, but Figueiredo, he is looking good as well. He came up to 135, beat Rob Font, which was a pretty big victory for him. Before that, he had that 4-fight series with Brandon Moreno where he lost 2 of the 4 fights and there was a draw in 1, so he came up on the short end of the stick in that rivalry. But Figueiredo, we kind of know his style. He's going to rely a lot on knockdowns, on finishes. He's not a super high volume guy. And this is an interesting matchup, honestly, in my opinion, because you look at Figueiredo, he's not necessarily the fastest guy with his feet, right? So Cody Garbrandt is going to have the potential to move around, use that footwork, stay disciplined, get in, get out, tag Figueiredo, and potentially win the fight that way. It's just he can't get clipped clean because we all know Figueiredo has big power, and Garbrandt's chin is just not something you could trust at this point in his career. So that's what makes Figueiredo the favorite, along with Figueiredo having a big submission threat where Garbrandt doesn't really have that. And Figueiredo in his last fight, if you did watch it, he got several takedowns. He won through getting takedowns in top control time, partially in the decision. And with Cody Garbrandt, I don't think that's going to be something that he can go to here. I actually think Garbrandt would be smart to try to mix in the takedowns and get a couple of takedowns in this fight if he could. We saw Brandon Moreno be effective with that, and Garbrandt just has to be wary of the submission threat from Figueiredo, and his top control isn't the greatest, so just be in good enough shape to where if he gets a takedown, he doesn't need to have that control time to kind of breathe and get back into it if Figueiredo gets back up, So ultimately, looking at the line, I think it's a dog or pass, but as a pure prediction, I'm going to predict that Deiveson Figueiredo wins this fight, and I'm going to say he wins via second round knockout, but I could also see this going to decision and Figueiredo just getting a couple of knockdowns and winning a fairly dominant decision like we saw Rob Font do over Cody. But I'll say that Figueiredo actually gets him out of there, and give me Figueiredo here, but I think the line is a little bit wide there. And continuing on through this card, next we got a great fight between Jim Miller and Bobby Green. And this fight also that had a couple different matchups canceled previously where they were supposed to fight 10 years ago, then they were supposed to fight a couple years ago during the pandemic. But they're getting it on now, and it's, not much of a better time to do it. UFC 300, especially with the allure from Jim Miller and all that. Everyone knows, he's at UFC 100, UFC 200, now UFC 300, looking to go 3-0. And he got a decision and a knockout, I believe. So now if he gets a submission, he can get all 3. So I'm sure that's what he's thinking, especially with jiu-jitsu being his main threat in the majority of his fights. But it's definitely a clash of styles. You look at Bobby Green, he's someone that likes to move around, pot shot you, use his speed, hands down, taunt you, get you to overextend, and then land the kill shots if he does find them. Not necessarily a guy that usually finishes you, though. And then he has good wrestling. His wrestling is definitely underrated. He doesn't really use it offensively that much, but he can get some big slams sometimes. And His takedown defense is pretty good, but I feel like Bobby Green is slowing down. He has a style like, think about it like a Roy Jones Jr., right? Where Roy Jones, at one point, he was untouchable and then started getting knocked out by guys that are way below his level. And I feel like Bobby Green is starting to maybe get in that part of his career, because you look at his last few fights, he's either got knocked down or knocked out in the majority of them. And previous to this little run, he had not been knocked out very often in his career at all. His last fight as well with Jaylen Turner, vicious knockout where he took a ton of damage. Coming back 4 months later, I think he's rushing it for this UFC 300 fight card, whereas he probably should take more time off and rest that chin, especially since he got dropped by Ferguson. He got knocked out by Drew Dober. Took 2 bad knockouts in the span of 1 year. And he's not necessarily a spring chicken either. And Jim Miller, he's on the opposite side of the spectrum in terms of that. He's older. He's had a lot of mileage, but he's still extremely durable. I mean, I would be shocked if Green knocked him out with punches. I think he would need more than that. And Miller's just a very durable guy. Usually, if you look at his career, he's only been knocked out with knees or head kicks, and Bobby Green doesn't usually pose those type of issues. And Jim Miller has been able to find the chin recently with the southpaw style pressure, straight punches. And if he lands clean on Bobby Green, I definitely think Miller could knock him out. He's flashed power recently. I think Bobby Green's chin is a little bit questionable. And obviously Miller could hurt him and then submit him as well. So I think Miller has multiple paths to victory. I think that his cardio has been looking better in recent fights, partially because he's been getting more preparation time, whereas I think a lot of his fights where he gassed out, got tired, they were short notice bouts. So I think that, having known probably for a long time that this is probably going to be a time that he's going to be fighting, having some preparation time for this fight specifically, I think Miller's going to be in good shape. He's going to be tuned up, and I feel like Bobby Green is not going to be at his optimum. So just due to that, with Jim Miller being the underdog, I got to go with Miller here, and I think he could win by knockout or submission. So give me Jim Miller to win this one inside the distance. But continuing on through the card, we got Jess Andrade versus Marina Rodriguez next up here. And another very intriguing, very good fight. Jess Andrade, she has been fighting a lot recently. Took a couple losses in fights she probably shouldn't have taken and had some personal life issues. But she got the winner last fight and is looking to kind of get back into the mix here. But she's taking on a girl in Marina Rodriguez, who I'm very impressed by, that I think is a very good fighter. And when you look at how these girls match up on the feet, Marina's going to be a lot longer, lengthier, and she's going to be the more technical striker. I feel like she's going to be able to pick Jessica Andrade off at range and win the majority of the exchanges and the stand-up battle. She just has to stay sharp, not get backed up. And I do see a lot of people speaking about the wrestling of Andrade, but ultimately I just don't think that that's going to become a big factor in the fight. I don't think Andrade will wrestle, honestly, that much. And if she does, I think Marina, if she defends 1 takedown, 2 takedowns, or gets taken down, gets back up to her feet, Andrade will kind of abandon the wrestling. And Marina's gotten a lot better with her takedown defense, their get-ups. And I was pretty impressed with her fight against Verna. Even though she lost, I thought her wrestling defense, her grappling looked a lot better. So ultimately, I just feel like Marina is going to be able to keep this fight standing, most likely, get the better of the striking exchanges, win a stand-up battle. And as the underdog, I think that Marina is a decent bet there. So give me Marina Rodriguez, get the job done in this one, get the win, and potentially be the next fighter in line for a title shot. And we're moving on here. We got Jaylen Turner versus Nato Moicano kicking off the early prelims, the prelims that are not on Fight Pass, I believe. And great fight. I mean, clash of styles. Jaylen Turner, long striker, huge guy for the weight class, extremely dangerous in that first round. And Moicano, grappler, moving up from 145, so he's a little smaller, even though he's, not the smallest guy. He's usually has a long frame for the weight, but this fight he's facing a monster. And decent Muay Thai, but a little bit slow. And ultimately, I think the main thing for Nato Moicano to do in this fight, or what he wants to do, is get out of that first round. If he can get out of the first round, his chances of winning are going to go up pretty exponentially, because I think Jaylen Turner cuts a lot of weight. I feel like he slows down majorly after the first round in a lot of his fights. And if Moicano can get a takedown in that second or third, establish some control time, hey, we could see Moicano sneak a victory here. But that first round is going to be a big danger for Moicano. He doesn't have the speed, in my opinion, even though he has decent Muay Thai, good kicks, leg kicks, straight punches, decent jab. Turner's going to be a lot more dynamic, a lot faster. He's going to be aggressive. He's going to be looking to land those long shots. And we've seen Moicano's chin fail him in the past. And also, if you watch Moicano's last fight, he got very tired himself and kind of got bailed out by Drew Dober making that mistake, going for that takedown where Moicano was able to get on top and kind of ride out the fight. Jaylen Turner has shown big improvements in his takedown defense, and so even if Turner slows down, potentially I could see Moicano slowing down as well, as long as Turner gives him some resistance in the grappling. So I got to go with the favorite. I think that Jaylen Turner is going to get this one done inside the distance. I'll say he gets it done in the first round, and even if he doesn't, I think he will be able to have enough to win a decision, even if he gets a little bit tired. But continuing on here, we got Sadique Yousef taking on Diego Lopez. Great fight here. Sadique Yousef, good basics, comes forward, throws nice leg kicks, solid boxing, very fast, explosive guy. He has decent wrestling. Takedown defense is a little bit questionable, I feel like, and obviously he doesn't have the best chin, and I don't think he's the most dynamic guy in terms of he doesn't bring a lot in terms of like crazy kicks or knees or anything like that. He's usually pretty basic, trying to walk you down with the boxing and the leg kicks, and he has big power and he's very fast and athletic, but he usually just works off the basics. And I feel like Diego Lopez, a little bit more dynamic striking, but the jab could potentially be a big factor in the fight for Yousef. If he can get that jab going on Diego Lopez, kind of control distance with that, start to go to the body, land bigger punches, we could see Lopez slow down a little bit and Sadique Yousef really beat him up and win with that boxing. But Diego Lopez has good hands himself. He's long and he's powerful, and I feel like he could touch Yousef and kind of wobble him, hurt him a little bit. And we all know about Diego Lopez's grappling pedigree and just his ability on the ground to throw up submissions from everywhere and be extremely dangerous. And I feel like if Yousef gets hurt and tries to wrestle, he will get submitted. And I don't think he could take him down even if he doesn't get hurt and hang out in his guard without being in grave danger. And I feel like on the feet, unless Yousef really gets to the body and establishes that jab early, I think Lopez is going to be able to land the harder shots, hurt Yousef, and ultimately I see him winning this one inside the distance. So I'm on the Diego Lopez train, and I think he's going to keep it rolling here. And the next fight we have here, Holm versus Kayla Harrison. Obviously, this is a fight that a lot of people have been talking about this week with the debut of Kayla Harrison, having to cut all the way down to 135, how she's going to look with that. And Holm, former champ, who's kind of fallen on some hard times here, but now is getting another opportunity similar to one we saw her have with Ronda Rousey. And the current champion of her weight class is a girl that she's beaten twice, so I'm sure she is seeing, potential to be champ again if she can win this fight. And honestly, it's hard to go with Holm, though, here in this matchup. I just feel like she's getting older. She is not looking quite as good. I feel like her takedown defense, her reactions to takedowns, is a lot slower than it was in the past. I don't think her footwork or distance control is as good, or hand speed or kick speed. So everything I think is diminishing. Whereas with Kayla Harrison, she's not a spring chicken, but I still think she's more in the prime of her career. And I think the UFC rule set is definitely going to benefit her style a lot more than the PFL rules that we saw, because she could throw elbows now, which is a big factor. I feel like if you watch her fight in Invicta, she had to make 145 for that one, so maybe it was a little bit more. Obviously it's 10 more pounds, but usually she's fighting at 155, and she really landed a lot of vicious elbows, cut her opponent open, and I feel like if she can get on top of Holm and land that type of ground and pound, I don't think Holly's going to quit because Holly's a warrior, and I think she's going to have a chip on her shoulder to try to win this fight. So I could see this one going longer. I don't see a big... unless Harrison just gets her back early when they're really dry or something, I don't see her submitting her. Or I think it's going to be either a ground and pound finish or a doctor stoppage finish via cut or a dominant decision for Harrison. The line, hard to say because just the level of opponents that Harrison has fought and ballooning them up to a certain weight where now she's cutting down to someone else's weight class. There's some variables there where Holly could do well. I think that Holly's really physical in the clinch herself, and if she can keep it at distance, she's going to have a chance, but I got to go with Harrison in this one, and I think she will get it done pretty dominantly. And this next fight here, very interesting fight here with the debut of Aljamain Sterling at 145 pounds, arguably the best 135-pound champ that we've ever had. He was recently in that, top of that top pound for pound, and now he's kind of trying to get back into the good graces of the UFC, all the fans, after that loss to Sean O'Malley. I think that he lost quite a bit of stock there. He wasn't necessarily, a champion that had a lot of clout and popularity, so he's going to have to win this fight to remind everyone, and if he loses this one, I think that he's going to be in a really rough position where I don't necessarily know what his next fight's going to be. He'll probably have to fight way down in the rankings. But his opponent, Calvin Kattar, he's 35 years old, coming back after 18 months off. He just had knee surgery. So that's also very alarming. You don't know exactly how he's going to look. Is he going to make the weight? He's facing a really difficult style to come off a knee injury with a really grappling heavy wrestler guy. And ultimately, I think Kattar has the more questions to answer because Sterling, I think he'll fit in at 145 fairly well. He's only going to have a 1-inch reach disadvantage here, even though he's going to have a 4-inch height disadvantage. The reach is not that much. And Kattar's kind of, even though he's thicker and obviously he's going to have more weight, but he's the same frame as Sean O'Malley. So it's not like it's something that Aljamain has never seen. He just fought someone with the exact same height and reach. And that first round, until Aljo really got over aggressive in the second, he was able to compete with, in my opinion, a more pinpoint striker and faster striker. So I think that Sterling, has proven himself, against a guy this size. But it's just Kattar, how he's going to come back from those injuries. But when you're looking at it stylistically, one thing that I like for Sterling is the movement. He needs to be moving. He needs to be switching stances and all the way in or all the way out, because that's going to be the way that he wins this fight. Calvin Kattar has really excellent takedown defense, so you can't just go in there and shoot blind takedowns on him early. I think you have to establish the striking, and Sterling could do that. He just has to move around. Kattar doesn't cut the cage off that well. He's really good with his counter punching. He could pull you into the pull too. He could pull you into the counter jabs. He could pull you into those elbows. When you're in the pocket, he's really slick. But if you move around, you throw kicks, you kind of stay on the outside, he could struggle to find guys sometimes. And I think Sterling is going to be a lot faster in that regard. And he's going to be used to fighting a lot guys that were a lot faster than Kattar. So I think he's going to have some success on the feet that other people don't see. It's just going to be, if Sterling can't get the takedowns, is Kattar going to be able to wear him down eventually and start to get to him later in the fight, like we saw Pereira do in the first fight with these guys, or we saw other guys do in the past. But I think that Sterling, he could potentially go out here and get an early submission as well, because I think Kattar, he likes to come out and be slow in the beginning of fights, and if Sterling goes in there, gets his back quick, he could submit anyone. So I wouldn't be shocked to see an early submission win for Sterling here. And ultimately, I think that on the feet, Sterling is going to do a lot better than people think, just with the movement, the footwork, staying out of the boxing range, being the guy with more tools. And I think mixing in the takedowns, we know that Sterling, even if he's not successful getting takedowns, he'll shoot 20 takedowns in a fight. And he used to be fighting 5-round fights. Now it's a 3-round fight. So he can, expend even more energy. And I think that if you shoot 10 takedowns on Kattar and you get 1, 2, 3 of them, maybe you could finish the fight. So I feel like Sterling has more ways to win. I think he is better than people give him credit for on the feet as well. And I think he's going to be able to get the job done over Kattar here and try to reinvent himself in this new weight class. So we'll see what's next for Aljo if he does get the job done. And this next fight, Yuri Prochazka versus Alexander Rockit. Not going to have a long breakdown for this one because just can't get a read on this fight. I feel like Rockit technically is the better fighter. He's also coming. A lot of guys coming off injuries, big injuries in this fight. But he's coming off an injury, a layoff, but like I said, I feel like technically he's better. He has that single leg that he can go to that Glover was very successful with versus Jerry, and if he can just kick his legs and use those straight punches, I think Rockit could win pretty decisively, pretty easily. He could even get a finish. But something about this fight, man, and I'm not going to give a technical breakdown. I mean, Jury's one of these guys that he's doing a lot of weird stuff with his hands, trying to distract you, switch stances. He's changing the tempo of his strikes. He's changing the power that he's throwing with. He's going body, he's going head, he's doing all these different things. But his striking's kind of wild, right? But, man, I just feel like Jerry's going to catch him at some point. So that's just going to be my prediction here. I'm going to go with Prochazka via second round knockout. And that's what I'm going to say goes down on that one. And finally, we're at the main card. And first fight of the night, a lot of people were shitting on this fight being on the main card. But Nikl versus Cody Brundage. And, not a lot to say about this one. I think that the line is crazy because we don't know much about Nikl at all. And he's the biggest favorite in UFC history. Not saying we don't know much about Nikl. That's not the right way to word it. But we don't know how he'll handle adversity. And there's a lot of things that could potentially happen that maybe you could lose that type of bet. And it's just a crazy odds. But I'm not saying to go jump on Brundage either. But, man, I mean, looking at it, Brundage, he gets a lot of flack for quitting in that one fight for the win against Malkoon. Had really bad performances in multiple fights. The Dumas fight. And then even pulling guard on Rodolfo Vieira. Just horrible fight IQ. But, man, we saw him drop Vieira in the first round. We've seen him knock guys out like Tresean Gore. We saw the slam KO. So at least this guy has done some stuff in the UFC. It's not like a complete can like Nikl has been fighting. But Nikl, he's went in there. He's gotten a couple of knockouts. He's gotten submissions. He's used his wrestling. And, I mean, there's not much to say about this one. I feel like Nikl's going to get the win probably in the first round. And I think he'll win whatever way he wants. If he wants to win via knockout, I think he could do that. If he wants to win via submission, I think he could do it. But, yeah, we'll see what's next for Nikl. And Brundage, I think, is a little bit more powerful than people are giving him credit for. Maybe he has a very outside chance of doing something, but Nikl definitely is likely to win that one. And up next here, Charles Oliveira versus Arman Tsarukyan. And I'm a big Charles Oliveira fan. I love his style. An action fighter. He has the most submissions in UFC history. But I think that this is a tough one for him. Another thing about it is Oliveira's had a lot of fights. He won the title. He got paid now. And almost 35. That 35 curse is real. It's been a thing. And with Oliveira, it's just, where's his motivation level at? Is he really that motivated to go and win the belt again? To me, Arman is a much better position in his career in terms of he's a lot younger. I think he's 7 years younger. He's on an upward trajectory where he's still trying to get to that money. He's going to try to win the belt. And stylistically, I mean, if you look at historically for Oliveira, it's a bad style matchup. I mean, Oliveira struggled against these shorter guys that could get inside on him and take him down, control him on top, beat him up, and land power punches on his chin. And Oliveira, he could land a knee up the middle. He could land, some of those big straight punches, intercept Tsarukyan, knock him the fuck out. I mean, it's definitely possible. I don't see a submission that likely unless he really hurts Tsarukyan and it's kind of through a desperate takedown. But I think that Tsarukyan is going to be the better grappler when he's on top and be able to control and, potentially dominate Oliveira. We've seen Oliveira kind of give up these submissions to guys that can out grapple him, and I know that people say that he's kind of grown past that, but we saw with Islam and a lot of these other guys that he was fighting were afraid to jump down in his guard and go down to the ground with him. So I think that Arman is a much different opponent. I think he's not going to be afraid at all to go down to the ground if he drops Oliveira, get on top of him and pound him out or try to submit him. And Tsarukyan isn't the greatest striker, but I think that he's going to be able to get on the inside, use his speed, his explosiveness. I think he's probably the more durable guy. And we've seen him get hurt and recover and come back to win fights. So he has heart as well. He's not just going to roll over. So I got to go Tsarukyan here, and I think he probably gets it done. I think he can get it done via decision. I like the over price. I think that probably going to go over. And I'm going to go Tsarukyan here. And now we got the BMF title fight. Amazing fight right here between Justin Gaethje and Max Holloway. And I'm still kind of leaning with my original convictions that I had on the video on Sunday. I like Max Holloway in this fight for the reasons why I outlined then, and I'll outline them again here. He's taking on the BMF champ, Justin Gaethje. Two guys here that are, legends of the game, two of the biggest fan favorites in the sport. Two guys that you never have to worry about a boring fight when they're in there in the octagon. But Justin Gaethje, I think that his path to victory is he's either going to have to get an early knockout, which I think is unlikely. Gaethje does have crazy power, like insane power. It's obviously true. But a lot of his knockouts happen later in the fights that he's had, when he's fought these higher level competition, even in PFL and World Series of Fighting and all that. And I've seen guys like Charles Oliveira and these other guys that I don't rate their chin on the same level as Max eat big shots from Gaethje and not get knocked out. So I think that Max is going to be able to probably take a lot of the headshots. It's just going to be if the jab, closes his eye or does something like that, gives him a big cut, which Max usually is hard to make bleed and things like that as well. And then the leg kicks for Gaethje too. I think the leg kicks for Gaethje could be his biggest path to victory. If he can get those leg kicks going early and slow Max down, make him fight more of a pocket fight in Justin's range, that's where the accumulation of damage and the attrition that Justin puts on guys could really get to Max. But ultimately, I think that Max, he's going to be switching stances in this fight. I think that he's going to be someone that's going to be longer. He's not longer in terms of his reach, but he fights longer and he throws straighter punches, and he's going to be cleaner boxer. I think he's going to be going to the body, which is going to be a big factor. I feel like the body attacks from Holloway is something that he needs to do in this fight, and Holloway's going to have the better cardio. If this fight gets extended, I think he's going to be the guy that's going to be fighting better down the stretch. I think that he also has the grappling upside, which I don't know if that's going to be a big factor in the fight, because I don't think it's likely either guy is going to try to wrestle here. But if they grapple, I think that Max Holloway has a submission threat there. I think that he could even submit Justin Gaethje as well. And ultimately, I just think that Gaethje's going to falter in the later rounds of this fight. I think that Holloway's going to pour that pressure on him and get him out of there. So I'm going to say Holloway gets this done in the third, fourth, or fifth round. And, give me Max Holloway to become the new BMF champion here. I think that 155 is a factor, but Gaethje, you have to remember, he's one of the smaller 155ers. He doesn't cut a lot of weight. He said that himself. And Max Holloway looks good for this one. It looks like he put the weight on the more proper way. I think that he might even be the bigger guy or way more when they're in there on fight night. So Max Holloway is going to be the pick for me there. And we got the co-main event. We got Yan Xiaonan taking on Zhang Weili. And a fight here that I think people are disrespecting Yan Xiaonan a little bit. I don't think that she's getting enough love in terms of people are giving her no chance to win. The money line, I think, is a little bit crazy. And if this fight stays on the feet, I think Xiaonan is the better striker. Xiaonan is not necessarily the most diverse striker. It's usually the jab, the 1-1-2s, that side kick. But she has great footwork, great distance control, She has big power. I mean, I know she only has the one knockdown, one knockout, but man, if you could knock a girl out like Jessica Andrade was out off the punch, and then she woke up getting hit, bounced off the ground like off the back foot like that. I mean, that's a lot of power for a 115-pound girl. So, Yan Xiaonan definitely is a dangerous striker, and I think that her grappling is defense has gotten better, but I just don't know about the wrestling, man. I don't know if she's gonna stuff the takedowns, and if she does get taken down, especially early, is that damage gonna offset the cardio advantage that I do think Yan Xiaonan has? I think people overrate Zhang Weili's cardio. I think that she does slow down in fights, but if she could take down Yan in those earlier rounds and put a lot of damage on her, that could kind of even out or even swing towards the Weili side. And that's just my fear here. I feel like on the feet it's going to be 50-50 fight, very competitive, maybe even a slight lean towards Yan Xiaonan. Will say it would be a slight lean towards Yan Xiaonan in my opinion. But I just don't know if she's going to stop the takedowns, and I'm not sure how much she's developed off her back to stop damage from coming in with ground and pound. Maybe she could stop submissions and things like that like we saw in the Dern fight, but I think that the ground and pound is going to be coming fierce from Zhang, and I think that could be a big factor. And at the end of the day, Zhang has the more experience in these type of fights. This is a huge moment, and I think she could potentially handle the moment better. So give me Zhang Weili, and I think she'll get this one done inside the distance, but I think the line is off. I would line Zhang at like a minus 300, maybe minus 275, and she's at, minus 500. So I think the line is definitely a little off, but give me Zhang Weili to retain the belt here. And up next here we have a fight between Alex Pereira and Jamal Hill, and you could almost say this is a unification bout for the title. I know that Alex Pereira is the undisputed champ technically, but Jamal Hill never lost his belt, and he's coming back to try to reclaim it. So I guess neither guy's a lineal champ because no one beat John Jones, right? But Jamal Hill, former champ that never lost his belt, got it taken from him due to injury, taking on the 2-division champ now, Alex Pereira. And man, I mean, this is a great fight. I feel like Alex Pereira, he's gained a lot of clout in the UFC in a short period of time, obviously. He went in there and was able to do the thing in the octagon, and now he has a big fan base, and I think that's kind of why the line is where it's at, on top of the injury worries for Jamal as well. But ultimately, I think that Jamal Hill should be the favorite in this fight because I just feel like he's more defensively responsible and he's more durable. And if you're in a striking fight with two elite strikers, two guys that I think are going to be, very dynamic on the feet, I'm going to take the guy that's more durable, that I think is probably going to be throwing more volume as well. I mean, Jamal Hill throws crazy amounts of volume, and he's someone that I don't think I've ever seen him even dropped, much less knocked out or anything like that. So even though Pereira has that crazy power, Pereira, I feel like in this fight is going to have to rely on the leg kicks early because Hill's going to be, able to, in my opinion, use the long straight punches, whereas Pereira likes to use hooks. And I think that early on to try to box with Jamal Hill is not going to be a smart decision for Pereira. I think it could get him knocked out. So he's going to want to get on that calf early. And I think for Hill, he's going to want to switch stance in this fight, which we saw him do in the Glover fight. And I think that's going to be one of the main things that he does in this one that could potentially throw Alex Pereira off, is that stance switching and just having no fear of Pereira. I think that's going to be a big factor. If he can walk Pereira down, force him these exchanges, I think that Hill's chin is gonna hold up better. It's just, you never know. If you eat one of those left hooks from Alex Pereira, you could get put to sleep too. But like I said, I trust the durability of Jamal Hill more, and I feel like Jamal has all the grappling upside if he wants to potentially go for a takedown. Like, I know people are saying he won't go for takedowns, and he probably won't. Maybe he won't, but Jerry Prohaska took down Alex Pereira in the first round and controlled it for like 2 minutes. And I feel like if he could do that, I think Jamal Hill could do it as well. And I think Hill has better ground and pound. I think he has a bigger potential submission threat. than Jury. That's hard to say. I mean, I guess Jury did submit Glover, so maybe you'll give him the grappling edge in terms of that. But I do think Hill has the better ground and pound. And cardio wise, I feel like both these guys are going to have elite cardio. There's no worries there. Heart, both guys have crazy heart. Jamal Hill fighting with a broken arm, he didn't even care about that. And I just feel like Jamal Hill is that guy. I think he's going to go out there. He's going to win this belt off Alex Pereira. And I think Alex Pereira will be back. I think he's going to be in some more huge fights, big fights. But I'm going with Jamal Hill via first round knockout in this one. I think he's going to be able to get this one done. I think he's going to touch Pereira's chin and get him out of there. I mean, I've seen too many guys be able to hit Pereira clean. And I think if Jamal Hill hits him clean, it's going to be a different impact for Pereira. And I think that Hill's going to knock him out. So Jamal Hill via first round knockout is going to be my official prediction in that fight. So there you have it, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this breakdown prediction video for UFC 300. Like I said at the beginning of the video, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Would really appreciate as much interaction as possible. Put a comment down below. Tell me what you think about my predictions. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Who are you betting on? What picks are you very confident on? Things like that. But as far as my most confident pick of the week, I won't go with Nikl. I'll go with someone else for you guys. I'll say my most confident pick, I'll go with... man, it's tough if you take out Nikl. I guess I'll go with Kayla Harrison, even though I don't like the money line on that. But for the parlay of the week this week, I'll say to go with Arman Tsarukyan and Kayla Harrison as the parlay of the week. So that's going to be the parlay of the week that I give you guys for this fight card. Thanks for watching. I'll be back soon breaking down another fight card. Might give you guys some breakdowns for PFL just if I have time. And I'll talk to you guys later.